Welcome children. Today we continue with the third chapter of history, the Delhi Sultans for standard 7th. This is part 4 of the video and this is the last part of this chapter, the Delhi Sultans. So let's begin now. The Delhi Sultans now had a vast area of the Indian subcontinent under their control. So you can see this brown area that you see were all under the control of the Delhi Sultans. Now one of the most important thing is to control such a huge area is a proper economic management. Now what is economic management? Yes, proper collection of revenue and taxes. So now let us see how did they do this. Now let us see the economic management of the Delhi Sultans. Now as you know, earlier the Sultans only controlled the garrison town. The remote areas that were away from the garrison town were not under their control. So the first thing that they did was to bring the hinterlands of all these cities under their control. Earlier these hinterlands were actually being looked after by rich landlords or samantas or local chiefs. Okay, they were looking after those lands which were not under the Delhi Sultanate rule earlier, and these chieftains used to collect taxes on their own. Whatever kind of taxes they wanted, they would collect from the peasants accordingly. Okay, but under the Alauddin Khilji, he brought a great change in the collection of revenue. What did he do first? He got the land assessed. Whatever the land was there, he got it assessed. Assessed means he looked into it and he sent his officers to really see the fertility of the soil, how much that land can produce, and accordingly taxes were levied on them. Okay, and it was a direct collection. Whatever was collected went directly to the emperor, okay, or to the sultan. Nobody could take the taxes in between, so it was under the direct control of the sultan. The local chief, as earlier would collect their own taxes, now could not collect taxes on their own. They could collect taxes whatever the sultan had prescribed, and even the chiefs, the rich landlords, now had to pay taxes. And it is said that Alauddin Khilji's way of collecting taxes was very unique at that time. So now let us see, children, how the taxes were calculated and collected. Okay, now the Sultan had certain officials who went and measured the land first, okay, and accordingly levied taxes on them, and they kept a careful account. They kept a detailed account of whatever they have surveyed, okay. And the Sultan also used to appoint some local chiefs and landlords as revenue collectors because they were more experienced and knew how to collect these taxes properly. Okay, and there are three types of taxes that Alauddin Khilji levied. What were the three types? One was called as kharaj, on cultivation. Whatever the crops that the farmer grew, 50% of it he had to give it to the sultan. That means if he grew 100 kgs of wheat, 50 kgs he has to give it to the sultan. Then there were taxes on cattle. People who had more cattle like cows, goats, sheep, all that, they would have to pay more taxes. Then taxes were on house, like we have house tax. Those who had bigger houses had to pay more tax. So basically there were three types of taxes that were levied on the people. One was on cultivation, which the farmers gave, and then on cattle, and then on houses. Okay. Now, to rule such a vast area was a big challenge for the Delhi Sultans. Okay, it was not easy for them. They had to face a number of problems. Now, let us look into the internal and external problems that these Delhi Sultans had to face. Now let us look into the internal problems that the Delhi Sultans had to face. In spite of having conquered a vast area, there were many such areas which were still not under their control. Okay, and because of the distance, it was too much. As I told you, the Delhi Sultans were ruling from Delhi, and to look after the place Bengal from Delhi was very far away. It was very difficult for them to control from Delhi. So what happened, that the local chief now started becoming independent and breaking away from the Sultanate empire. Okay, Then they also now made attempts during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time. They also went down south and occupied large portions of southern India. But when they returned back to Delhi, the entire region became independent again, because it was very difficult for them to control that. So it was of no use conquering southern India. Even the gigantic plain, where the Ganga plain is there, it's a forested region, and it was very difficult for the Delhi Sultans to control that. Because of the forest region, they were unable to get in, and the local chief now declared themselves independent, and they had their own setup in the forested regions. Okay, so the local chief ruled in these regions. They were unable to get inside them and get it under their control. Okay, only rulers like Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq forced and brought them under their control, but the later rulers were very weak and they could not control the empire together. So these were some of the internal problems. Now this is Genghis Khan. Okay, he was a Mongol general who had an ambition of occupying the entire world under his control. So he would go and conquer places, and he had his eyes on India also. Okay, and since he could not enter from the northeast, he would go all around and come through the northwestern side through Iran. Okay, and he posed a great number of threats to the Delhi Sultans. Now let us look into the external problems that the Delhi Sultans faced due to the invasion of Genghis Khan. Now children, let us look into the external problems that the Delhi Sultans have to face. Okay, as I told you, the Mongol, and under the leadership of Genghis Khan, he posed a lot of threat to the Delhi Sultans, and he invaded India through Transoxania. Now Transoxania is nothing but a fancy name for northeast Iran. Okay, because I told you, because of the Himalayan range, they could not attack from northeast. They came all the way, and from northwest they attacked India and invaded India in 1219. Now because of these attacks, especially during the rule of Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq, these two rulers now had to keep a huge army in order to defend their empire. And to have such a huge army, what is required? A lot of revenue is required, and this posed administrative challenge for the Delhi Sultans. How are they going to get this revenue to manage this large army and prevent the Mongol attacks? So these were the external problems during the Delhi Sultan rule. So now let us look into how the Delhi Sultans managed these invasions. Now let us see how the Delhi Sultans dealt with the Mongol attack. We are going to do a comparative study between two Delhi Sultan rulers, between Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad Tughlaq. Now during Alauddin Khilji, the Mongols had attacked Delhi twice. You can see the dates: 1299 and 1300, and then again in 1302 and 1303. Now, to prevent these Mongol attacks, Alauddin Khilji made a large army. He raised a large standing army in order to protect his kingdom. Now, similarly, Muhammad bin Tughlaq kingdom was all during his time the Mongols had attacked. Okay, but he was able to defeat the Mongol army, and now Muhammad bin Tughlaq became very confident, so he raised a large army and now planned to attack Transoxiana and defeat the Mongol army. So that is the reason why he raised a large army. So you see, what was the difference in raising a large army between Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq? Now Alauddin Khilji raised the army as a defensive approach in order to defend his kingdom, but Muhammad Tughlaq, it was an offensive approach. Offensive means he realized that, okay, you are going to attack us, now we are going to attack you, and that's the reason why he raised a large army. In order to prevent the Mongol invasions, Alauddin Khilji constructed a new garrison town named Siri. Now what is a garrison town? Yes, a garrison town is a place where the soldiers live, and all kinds of amenities are provided in that town. So it was only meant for the soldiers. Now, why did he build this garrison town? So that the soldiers could be looked after properly, and whenever there was an invasion, they could be collected from there and sent to the front. Okay, so that's the reason why he built this garrison town. Now let us compare what Muhammad Tughlaq did. Now he, instead of constructing a garrison town, he asked all the citizens who were living in the old city, Delhi-e-Kunwa, to empty their houses and move to a new capital city which he had made in South India called Daulatabad. So all the citizens of the old city had to empty their house, they had to carry all their belongings and march towards the new city right from north to south. Okay, and then once it was emptied, the soldiers were made to live in those houses. So what was the difference between Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq? Now Alauddin Khilji especially made a new town only for the soldiers. Now Muhammad bin Tughlaq, a very poor administrative decision. He asked all his residents to travel from Delhi to Daulatabad, and on the way thousands of people died because it was very hot on the way. They had no water and food. So this was not liked by the people at all, and this was a very poor decision. Now children, in order to keep such a large standing army, the soldiers had to be fed well. Okay, they had to be kept healthy, and to feed them lot of money was required. So where will the money come from? So they had to levy taxes. Okay, and let us see what Alauddin Khilji did. He taxed those farmers who were growing crops between the fertile land of Ganga and Yamuna, that is the Doab region, and he asked them to pay 50% of whatever was produced. Okay, so if a farmer was growing 100 kgs of wheat, he had to give 50 kgs to the Sultan. Now why did he tax only those farmers? Because that land was very fertile. Area between the river Ganga and Yamuna is considered to be very fertile. So it made sense that the rich farmers were taxed more. Okay, so that was the move by Alauddin Khilji. Now let us see what Muhammad Tughlaq did. He also had to feed a large army, so he also put taxes on the Doab farmers because they were rich farmers and fertile land, but he levied an additional tax. So apart from 50% they were already paying, he asked them to pay more. Okay, and when he levied the additional tax, that year there was famine there, when nothing grew there, so the farmers were unable to pay taxes. So this was the difference between Alauddin and Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq in regards to collecting taxes and managing the finance of the country. Now children, let us again look at the comparative study between Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq regarding payment for soldiers and their market policy. Now Alauddin Khilji believed in giving salaries to his soldiers rather than giving them iktas. Now we had learnt earlier that the early Delhi sultans used to not give salaries to their soldiers but distribute land or iktas. He did not believe in it. He preferred to give them salaries, and with their salaries then the soldiers could go to the Delhi market and buy all kinds of things from the merchants. Now he also had a new policy called as the market policy, and he believed that everyone should not be cheated. So he appointed officials in the market who would go and survey the market and see that the price of each and every commodity remained the same in every shop. Nobody could increase. Like today, even today when we go and buy a particular dress for ourselves, one shop says it is 1000 rupees, the second shop may say 1200 rupees, the third shop may be 800 rupees, the fourth shop may be even 500 rupees. So we actually do not know the cost of that dress, and we feel we are being cheated. So now to prevent all this, the market was properly surveyed. The officials would go and check the weight of all the vegetable vendors also, so that they give a proper weight, and if anyone did not follow the rules, then they were punished. So you see, he managed the salaries as well as the market control was perfect during Alauddin Khilji's time. Now let us see Muhammad Tughlaq. He also paid his soldiers salaries. Now what was his market policy? He started a very new concept during that time, was he started a token currency, something like we use our paper currency today. Okay, but this token currency was made out of cheap metal, and it did not have the royal seal on it. Okay, so anyone could make that metal. And the currency was same value as a gold and a silver coin. So if I paid one cheap metal, I could go and exchange it from the treasury with a gold or a silver coin. Now people at that time were very smart. They knew that this was made of a very cheap metal which was locally found under the ground. They would collect the metal, melt it, and make it into coins. Because it did not have a royal seal, it was very rough and raw. So everyone started making coins at home, and they would take these coins to pay their taxes and bring back gold and silver coins. Okay, so what happened due to this? People, the treasury, Sultan's treasury was soon empty. Yes, because the gold and silver coins were exchanged with this cheap metal. Although Muhammad bin Tughlaq's idea of starting a token currency was very good, but he did not implement it very well. So you see, children, Alauddin Khilji's administrative measures were very successful. Now, why was it successful? We have learned how he made a garrison town, how he controlled the market policy. Yes, and very successfully he could withstand the Mongol invasions. All his administrative measures, he handled it very well. Now, in comparative, now Muhammad Tughlaq, all his administrative measures failed, although they were very good measures, but he could not handle them properly. Now, his campaign to Kashmir failed. Then he gave up his plan to invade Transoxania. He disbanded his large army, and a lot of complications were there. He shifted his people to Daulatabad in order to make the garrison town. He raised the taxes, additional taxes on the Doab farmers, which led to famine. And then he finally started the token currency, which also failed because it was not properly made. So you see, all his administrative measures failed. His subjects are very unhappy, and they suffered a total financial mismanagement in the taxes. Soon the treasury was empty. There was famine. There was rebellion. People started revolting against him, and that led to the downfall of the Tughlaq dynasty. So you see, this was the difference between the policies made by Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Children, moving ahead to the 15th and 16th century, we see after the decline of the Tughlaq dynasty, the Sayyids and Lodhis ruled from Delhi and Agra till 1526, and after 1526 we see the Mughals coming into India. Now, since the Sayyids and Lodhis were not as powerful rulers as the Khiljis and Tughlaqs, so many small states now wanted to break away from the Delhi Sultan rule and declare themselves as independent. And which were they? They were Jaunpur, Bengal, Malwa, Gujarat, Rajasthan, entire South India now declared themselves as independent rulers and established their own prosperous state. If you remember, during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's rule, the entire South India was under his control, but he could not manage it very well, so they all started breaking away from the Delhi Sultan rule and established their own prosperous state and declared themselves as an independent ruler. And during this time, we see many ruling groups like the Afghans and the Rajputs were becoming very powerful. Now, during this time, we see some states who had declared themselves as independent were very small but were very powerful, and they administered the state very well. And we look into one of the rulers was Sher Shah Suri. He's also called as Sher Shah Sur, and he ruled from 1540 to 1545. Now, he started his career just like a small manager in a small territory of his uncle in Bihar, and then he grew and made himself so powerful that he challenged the Mughal Emperor Humayun in 1530 and 1540. Again in 1555 and 1556 he captured Delhi and established his own dynasty. Now Sher Shah, he established his own dynasty, which was called as the Sood dynasty or Suri dynasty, but he ruled only for 15 years between 1540 and 1555. But his administration was excellent, and it is said that he copied Alauddin Khilji's style of administration, which was effective and better. And later we see the same style was applied by Emperor Akbar, okay, the Mughal Emperor Akbar between 1556 and 1605, the same administration model of Sher Shah Suri. So he adopted that. So children, we see after the decline of the Tughlaq dynasty, none of the dynasties were very powerful, and the last dynasty of the Delhi Sultan were the Lodhis. They were also not powerful, and finally they were overthrown, and it passed on to the Mughals. So after this, the Lodhi dynasty, we see the Mughals coming into India. With this, we end this chapter on the Delhi Sultans. I hope you have understood the entire concept. Okay, please do view and subscribe, and wait for my next video on the Mughals.